The Seiko Navigator, a classic from the early 1970s or perhaps the late 1960s, with its distinctive blue and red rotating inner bezel serving to provide a GMT display for the user. This watch has the 6117B hacking movement running at 21,600 beats per hour. This is an absolutely wonderful vintage Seiko and arguably should be in every Seiko enthusiast's collection. I've not opened it yet, but judging from the state of the outward appearance, it would seem that this watch has not had any attention for many years. The Perspex crystal is in rough condition with many scratches and could do with replacing, and of course the case is thoroughly gunked up with accumulated crud. This watch was sold as seen and did not come with a metal bracelet, although judging by the dirt patterns, it did used to sport one. I personally like leather straps as metal ones irritate me, so that's what I'll be using, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This watch needs a lot of work. I know there is a beautiful watch hiding in there somewhere, so let's get cracking. And of course I will start by unscrewing the watch back and removing the movement from the case. And boy was that back tight, almost looks as if the pegs on my case opener would break. And now with the movement out of the case, I can remove the dial and hands. Let's look at the current performance to see what we're dealing with. Well, straight away I can see that there is a performance issue. Not surprising really. I know the lift angle should be set to 54.5 degrees, but the difference in displayed amplitude would only be about 10 degrees. The time grapher here cannot even lock a reading at all. The rate is showing a loss of 250 seconds per day and the balance is quite out of beat. Okay, with that done, let's just proceed and dismantle the movement. Well, as you can see, the watch has indeed not been serviced for a very long time. There is a lot of old oil and grease which has just gummed up. The problem with this is that old oils and greases in this state will stop acting as a lubricant and will start becoming an abrasive. So if you're one of those owners who boast of never having their watch serviced and it still works perfectly, well, take note, this is what it probably looks like inside. I'm not sure what performance I will eventually get from this watch, but we shall see. I'll clean and lubricate the movement and, of course, we'll hope for the best. But whilst the parts are cleaning in the machine, I can remove the Perspex crystal. This is a tension-fitted crystal, and in order to remove it, I'm going to use some air pressure. I have demonstrated in the past using a medical syringe for this purpose, but I do have an air compressor to hand, and so I can use that in the same way. And as you can see, the air pressure forces the crystal to pop out of the case in a safe manner. This is the metal ring which allows the crystal to be fitted under tension so as to provide a watertight seal. Now, I personally do not really like scratched up watch cases, so I'm going to clean and polish it now. And I'll show you how that turned out later, but for now, let's reassemble the cleaned up movement. Somebody asked in the comments of a previous video if I lubricate the mainspring. Here, I'm applying a braking grease to the barrel walls, and off camera, I apply a fine film of Mobius 8200 grease to the length of the mainspring. And with the mainspring barrel reassembled, I can assemble the automatic works. And now I can assemble and lubricate the train wheels and the escapement. I found that the KIF tool here is very useful for removing diashot springs, but not for replacing them. Every watch repairer has their preferred method, but personally I like to replace diashot springs manually with my tweezers, as I'll demonstrate shortly. And now I can assemble the keyless and calendar works. And finally, I can attach the automatic bridge assembly. Giving it a bit of a test, and after adjusting the balance, I can see a remarkable improvement. The amplitude is quite low, and I suspect this is due to the wear on the movement from years of not having it serviced. The amplitude here is 196 degrees, but in reality it's more likely around 200 degrees as I've not adjusted the lift angle setting in the time grapher, which should be 54.5 degrees for this particular movement. But I'm going to see if it's possible to make slight improvements by checking the escapement and the wheel bearings. I'm going to use a smoothing broach on all the pivot holes to make sure that no contaminants still reside. Ultrasonic cleaners are great at their job, but sometimes you do really need to get manually in there. And so I'm using a very fine smoothing broach just in case. I'll also do the same for the train wheel bridge and of course the main plate. And off camera, I noticed that the hairspring occasionally would bind together. I removed the balance wheel from the balance cog in order to place it back into the ultrasonic machine for an extended period, and this seemed to do the trick. So after all this, we can see a slight improvement. With the lift angle correctly set, the amplitude is showing around 210 degrees of movement, and the rate is excellent with beat error to be pretty much negligible. I can be okay with this. It is looking like this will be a reliable watch for me moving forward, but I also note that due to excessive wear, I will need to service this on a more regular basis than normal, but this can be par for the course for vintage watches. Now I can continue with replacing the dial and hands. And I can see there is a smudge on the dial here from earlier when I placed the dial on my casing cushion. I removed these later off camera, as you'll see in the final result. Now I can fit the crystal to this case, and to do this I need to use my press. I've ordered a new glass as there is a slight crack in the old one. It did not arrive in time for this video, but I will replace it as soon as it comes in. And with that done, I can recase the movement. And we're done. And it really does look handsome. The inner bezel can be rotated by turning the crown. The watch is currently set to Bangkok time, so if I wish to set the bezel to show, for instance, London time, which is 6 hours behind, I can line up the 6 with the 12 o'clock position, and then I can observe the GMT hand is after the 7 o'clock position on the bezel, and with it pointing to the blue zone, I know that it is 7:18 in London in the AM. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more, then click the subscribe button below this video. It's free, and if you click the bell, you'll be informed whenever I upload new content. Also, check the links in the description of this video for details on our Facebook group and my Instagram, where I post regular updates on my projects. And if you're interested in learning more about watch repair, then please visit my website, which is www.watchrepairlessons.com, for further details of my watch repair course. This video was made possible with the support of my patrons who support this channel every month, and without you, I would not be able to fund these projects, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And with that said, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.